Joining me now, as promised, the governor of Florida, Charlie Crist, who is running for Senate as an independent now. Governor, thanks for your time tonight.
It's great to be with you, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with a little breaking news here as we look at the latest polling in your state. Mr. Rubio's margin over you has been cut to 7. The Democrat, Mr. Meek, has slipped to 15% of the vote. Politico reported tonight the former President Bill Clinton twice persuaded Mr. Meek to withdraw, to endorse you, but that Mr. Meek changed his mind. Mr. Meek's campaign says this article is not true. He's not withdrawing. You should withdraw. Do you know anything about this that can add to our understanding of what's going on?
Well, those discussions did occur, I can tell you that much. And I think that, what's happening in Florida is that common sense Democrats, Republicans, and independents understand that the way in which we defeat a right-wing radical in Marco Rubio who wants to overturn Roe versus Wade, wants to not have stem cell research to help those who have Alzheimer's, cancer, diabetes, and other maladies that might be difficult. And as I talked about, as it relates to you, regrettably, not you regrettably, but you and other people who he thought didn't love America enough that they should leave the country, that's kind of radical right extremism that people don't want, that the former president doesn't support, and that common sense Democrats, independents, and Republicans do not support in the Sunshine State, and that's what's going on.
All the polling suggests that you're closing that margin with Mr. Rubio comes from support that you're gaining from independents and Democrats. Do you think Florida voters have the right to know in advance of that vote on Tuesday which party you would caucus with if elected to the U.S. Senate?
Well, they certainly have the right to know, Keith, how I feel about the issue if I have the honor of being elected. And I've consistently said here in the Sunshine State that if I am elected, I would ask very tough questions of both parties, frankly. How are you going to help our economy in Florida? How are you going to help job creation in the Sunshine State? How are you going to help us get a national catastrophic fund that will protect Florida from storms in the future? These are big issues, and depending on the answers I get from both, it would help make that decision or not to remain as an independent. It really depends on what the answers to those questions are for the next 2 years and the next Congress, again, if I have the honor of winning.
If a Florida voter hears that, though, and says that no matter what sort of serious vetting you would do, that your decision would not be made till after the election, particularly with how narrow the Senate outcome might be on Tuesday, would you understand that it might appear to that voter that you might not be acting on principle but more opportunistically?
Well, I'm acting on principle because I want to do what's in the best interest of my fellow Floridians. I love them, and I care deeply about them and deeply about my state and my country. And I would want to do what's in the best interest of them, depending upon the kinds of answers, because we don't know what the outcome is going to be, Keith. Nobody really does. There's all kind of polls, and we don't know if they're accurate. And I think the reality is that whatever the outcome is after the election, you have to ask those people that are in leadership positions what they can do to help my state. That would be, in fact, my job as a U.S. Senator from Florida. And depending on those answers, I would be able to make that decision in a prudent, practical, thoughtful way.
Do you think, in terms of being a veteran of practical politics, that having said what you have said about Mr. Rubio, having said what you have said about those parts of the Republican Party that have gone off in this direction that's unpalatable or impalatable to you, right, that if they were to be in charge of the Senate and you were elected instead of Mr. Rubio, is it still plausible that you could work with them after all that has happened between you and the Republican Party as it now constitutes itself?
Well, candidly, it wouldn't be the easiest thing in the world. I mean, I have to be honest with you. But, it seems to me that you have to analyze things and facts and circumstances as they occur. Some in the Republican Party have not been very kind to me since I decided to go independent in this race. And, they have the right to do that. I understand it. Some people are so rigid in their partisanship that anybody who dares to do what most Americans, I think, want, and that is a fiscal conservative, which I am, and a social moderate who is a live and let live kind of guy. If you go independent, it's hard for those that are so partisan to understand that that's a genuine act. But it is in my case. That's how I feel. That's where my heart is, and only I can truly know that. And those are the facts.
How permanent is your independence of the Republican Party? Is it plausible that you could rejoin it in the near future, say?
Well, I'm not thinking beyond what's happening on Tuesday. I'm trying to earn the trust and confidence of the people that I love so much, the people of Florida, and see what the outcome is of this election. I love serving them. I'd like to serve them in the United States Senate, give them an honest broker who cares about their future, who cares about the economy, who cares about job creation, better education, protecting the Everglades and our environment. That's why I'm running for the Senate.
On the national scope, given the way the Senate has been gridlocked, would be the polite term to use it in the last couple of years, by the filibuster or the threat of the filibuster. If elected, no matter where you were, would you support filibuster reform?
I support the opportunity for free speech. And, you know, filibuster is an awkward sort of thing. I understand that. But there may be times where that's appropriate in rare, limited circumstances. What I think we ought to do is not have it be, you know, the 60% rule that they have in the Senate doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You know, most people, most Americans believe that a simple majority is appropriate to pass things. I certainly would support that because I think it's the right thing to do.
I'll close where we began on that breaking news. I guess I should have asked this following my question about what you knew about those conversations about the possibility of Mr. Meek dropping out and endorsing you. Do you think he's going to do that, or do you think all three of you will be fully engaged on the ballot on Tuesday?
I don't think that he will. I think that all three of us will be on the ballot. But I think it's very clear to common sense Democrats, Republicans, and independents that if they want somebody who's not for overturning Roe versus Wade, as Mr. Rubio is, who does support stem cell research, as I do, if they want a common sense voice who wants to really break the partisanship down, stop the gridlock, then Charlie Crist is their candidate.
I have one additional final question. As we're speaking here, the Meek campaign has been in touch with us and wanted to ask by proxy a question, which is how would you know that there had been conversations about Mr. Meek dropping out?
How would I know?
How would you know?
Because I had numerous phone calls with people very close to President Clinton.
Well, that's an answer. Independent candidate for U.S. Senate, Governor Charlie Crist of Florida. One way or the other, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you, Keith. Good to be with you.